Hi everyone, I am Marion Grobb Finkelstein, Workplace Communication Consultant, and I am joined today by a wonderful colleague that you are going to want to stay tuned because she's going to be sharing with us some tips and solutions all about workplace relationships and how to make it work when things kind of get a little rough in that sandbox. Please help me welcome Penny Tremblay. And Penny, I'm so glad that you're able to join us
Oh,
today.
thanks for having me, Mary. And yes, things can get a little gritty in the sandbox, can't they?
They can indeed. Well, let's play with that wording a little bit because you have a new book coming out of the same name, and you talk all about the new workplace sandbox. Explain to me what you mean by that.
Well, the workplace landscape has certainly changed. Here we are in September of 2020, and 6 months ago, before COVID, we had a different landscape for workplaces. So today's landscape could possibly be that people are working double overtime, like in healthcare, frontline workers, or that the workplace sandbox has really seen people disperse into different locations with remote working and telecommuting. So things have basically completely shifted as far as where people are physically located and how they're actually coming in to meet together, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. Some work teams have half the people coming in and half the people not feeling safe or not really wanting to risk coming into the workplace. So the landscape has changed. And if you can imagine, just for a moment, being at the beach and building this beautiful sandcastle and coming back to it the next day and it's completely gone, or it's wiped out by the tide, or half of it's gone, or somebody stomped on it overnight. The interesting thing about the metaphor of sand is that it's impermanence, right? Nothing is ever set in sand. And so the new workplace sandbox is looking a little different than it did 6 months ago. And so the focus of the book, it will definitely be accommodating the new workplace sandbox and different strategies on how to get along when, as we said, things get a little gritty.
Right. And one of the things that you deal with a lot of your clients is helping them with conflict during difficult times. So, I mean, everybody's following COVID, unfortunately, and it's greatly impacting our workplaces and our behaviors and how we're doing things. How is that contributing to conflict, or is it?
Well, it certainly is, because it's an added stress and everybody's had to figure out a new way of doing things. So, on top of the already busy that we were, now
Yeah.
we have additional things like learning curves, and we've got additional stress. I mean, people are afraid. Some people are not afraid at all. As a change management specialist, such as yourself, and recognizing different people have different personality styles, and some are like, we will conquer, and other are, hiding under a rock, or,
Yeah.
like a turtle, they've pulled their head into their shell and they're waiting for this to blow over. So we have to, we see a great need for empathy and compassion and tolerance, and recognizing that we're not all the same, and that nobody has been here before, and we don't know how to do this. So
Right.
there's a lot of extra conflict that has popped up. Um, some people are quite happy working from home. Some people are not so much. So, you know, uh, up until now, I think we've really found that people were in survival mode. They were able to get through the things that they needed to get through, to do the things that they needed to do. And we're all in different situations. Some people are working from home. Some people are alone at home. Some people are working amongst their kids and trying to share
Right.
bandwidth and equipment.
It's
And so
difficult.
it really is difficult.
Mhm.
And just a little plug, extra plug for women in business and women in the workplace. Um, we as women typically take on those caregiver roles, and that adds a lot of extra pressure. I'm not saying that men don't take on the caregiver roles, but I am saying that statistics are starting to show where women could be losing about 3 decades of progress toward equality because of
Right.
the need for them to take on extra role with homeschooling
Yes.
and children who aren't going back to school or who haven't gone back to school. And so um, again, you know, the landscape has really shifted and changed. And so conflict has also shifted and changed in different ways as well.
So, as managers, what can managers do, be they male or female, to help their employees during this sifting sands time? Um, and shifting sands, I guess is what I meant to say.
Yep.
But it's sifting too, sifting through the time, you know, it's passing by us and it's happening. So what can, as a manager, what can a manager do to help their employees? And what's the one of the biggest challenges that a manager faces during this time?
Well, I think that communication isn't going to be any surprise to you or to
Mm-hmm.
your audience. You know, we have to be communicating because distance erodes trust. So here's an example. Imagine you walk into the workplace, you say your good mornings on your way by to your desk, you grab a coffee from the local, you know, from the community area for coffee, whether it's the kitchen coffee station, you sit down. You've already taken in a lot of information and you've already given out a lot of information. For example, I'm here on time. You know, I'm happy or I'm looking a little frustrated. I see this group's already working. I see that committee's in the boardroom. And all of this is going on without any communication, right?
Right.
It's visual. You're just absorbing it all. So as a manager, um, I would suggest that you keep that in mind, that people aren't gaining any of that information without somebody communicating it or without some sort of central communication that they could be reading or you know, looking up. So you might have to be a little bit over, you have to recognize the gaps there. And so communication might have to be amplified. You might think like, oh, like that's exaggerating things, but is it really? I've talked to a lot of people and I always ask the question because I'm so interested in the new workplace sandbox and conflict. I ask people like, you know, how's your level of conflict in your workplace? And some people say nobody's here, so there is no conflict. Yeah, but remember, we were in survival mode, right? Now we're back into reintegration mode, and people are coming in, and like you say, they're all of different personality styles, and they're all of different levels of fear and or you know, courage. So um,
And
it's
people
keeping
communicate.
things tight. It's keeping communication tight. That's what has to happen.
Right.
And it's not only a manager's responsibility to do that. So for people
Indeed.
who think that, oh, well, I haven't heard from my manager in days, well, you know, pick up the phone, call. You
Yes.
know, I'm
Yes.
such an advocate of face-to-face conversation, be it Zoom,
Right.
phone calls, or you know, some type of FaceTime or something, because especially when there's conflict. You know, the last thing that I want to encourage people to do is use typing and digital communication when things are a little off. The best thing you can do is pick up the phone and check in.
Right. The beauty of speaking too is that it's synchronous, meaning
Synchronous.
it happens immediately.
Yeah.
You say
Yeah.
something, I respond. I say something, you respond. So it allows the time gap for clarification is very short.
Yes.
You say something I don't quite understand. I say to you, Penny, I didn't quite get what you meant there. Would you mind explaining that to me?
Exactly.
And you can clarify right away. It must be very difficult for both managers and employees when there is a conflict going on, and it must go to the sense of somebody feeling if they're making a difference or significant or not. I understand from reading your background and checking out your website and such that you talk about some of the important things in a working relationship is about feeling significant and feeling like you're having an impact.
Right. Feeling like you're in on things, feeling like
Right.
you matter, feeling like you're making a contribution. And a lot of times what we do isn't acknowledged. So, especially from those personality styles that just think like, you know, why should I have to acknowledge everything? I give them a paycheck and that
Yeah.
should be acknowledgement enough. But
Right.
because so many people are lacking confidence and self-assurity that they're doing enough, that they're good enough. They want to hear that or feel that in some way. So again, it's about communication. And one of the conflicts that I'm going to assume that people have with the idea of communicating with everyone and really amplifying and ramping up is, well, how do I have time to fit that in? And so I want to encourage people to recognize that check-ins can be really short, right? And they should be short, because they shouldn't be like, hey, what did you have for dinner last night? Well, that's getting a little bit onto what I would say theft of company time. You know, like we're paying, people are being paid to do a job, and so we don't want to just be all about job and not about the personal and the social. But keep things to an efficient time frame. So let's say you have to check in with your manager or you have a quick question, you know, keep things moving and keep things short. And I think that that's one way that we could really help people feel significant when we're checking in with them, not necessarily checking in on them, but checking in with them,
Right.
asking them questions, asking them their opinion. What do you think about this? I think one of the
Right.
worst things that we can do is exclude people from the planning stages, even if it's a quick check-in, like, you know, can you give us your feedback or opinion? Like I know you promote as a manager going through change, you know, give them the information as it comes available. No, you don't have to wait till it's already you know, compiled before you have this big rollout,
Because you'll
because
never know 100%.
that's right.
You'd be waiting
And
forever.
people really feel left out, and that gossip and grapevine
Yeah.
really just blows up if they're not being fed even little bits of communication.
Right.
You know, I, as a leader of my company, what I say to people is, if you have any questions, I'm old fashioned. Call me. Okay, pick up the phone and call me, and I'll tell you what. If I can't take your call, I won't. Leave a message. I'll call you back as soon as I can.
Right.
Because, you know, my email is flaky sometimes, and I would never want somebody to think that I didn't get back to them. And sometimes
Right.
somebody's message gets lost in a sea of email. And so
True.
I always say to people, like, take responsibility for getting the information that you need, and um, you know, to move things along, because that really creates conflict if people email a week ago and you haven't gotten back to them yet.
Right. You are so right. Just this morning, in fact, I reached out to a client on that note of follow up and take responsibility if you haven't heard from somebody. I had sent a proposal last month sometime, never heard anything. Well, that's out of character for that person. So I emailed with the intent, had he not responded, I was going to text. Had he not responded to that, I was going to phone. So using the different communication vehicles also helps. That's a really good suggestion. That's a great tip, Penny, and a good
And had he not
reminder.
responded to that, you could just show up at his house and, you know, start peering in his windows.
With a mask, not a burglar mask, a COVID mask.
No, that's right. Definitely a COVID mask.
So tell me,
uh,
what are some tips that you referenced about managers making employees feel significant? Let's flip it. What could employees do to help make managers feel significant?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because uh, creating a great team is everyone's responsibility. And I am so about responsibility. You know, it's not managers' responsibility to create a great
Right.
culture. It's everyone's responsibility. And it's not your employer's responsibility to create great mental health for you. It's everyone's responsibility to create, to co-create. And so, you know, it's neither one person's responsibility or another to maintain significance. Keep showing up. I really want to inspire people to speak up. You know, there's, first of all, conflict is uncomfortable. Okay, so saying something that might go against the grain in a meeting, it might be at the tip of your tongue, but you're like, yeah, I don't feel safe to say this.
Right.
Creating a culture of candor means creating a honest and transparent culture where people just feel okay, they feel safe to
Right.
say what it is that they want to say, to to test the waters or to call something out, because um,
Mhm.
none of us is as smart as all of us. And so I really want to encourage people to speak up, and speak up kindly, right?
Right.
And sometimes communication is an art, not a science. I
Mhm.
mean, not sometimes, that's just a standard.
Mhm.
Communication is an art, not a science. It will never be perfect. And sometimes what comes out of your mouth in the moment, it doesn't sound good. You like come out with something and you go, oh, you know what? That didn't sound right. This is
Yes.
my recommendation. If you speak up and you think that that didn't land the way
Mhm.
that you intended,
Mhm.
call it out right then and there. Like, oh, you know what? That didn't quite sound right. Or I didn't mean to be offensive with that remark. Or,
Right.
you might be thinking about it later that afternoon or later
Right.
that night. That's a prompting. Don't think that that prompting isn't real. Like, I would reach out again on that note and say, oh, by the way, something I said today, I hope what was not offensive to you, because I certainly didn't mean it. And it's that whole let's just be human and be
Right.
vulnerable, and let's forgive people for their humanness and their inability to be perfect with their words. Because
Mhm.
if you expect perfection, people aren't going to feel safe, and you're not going to feel safe
and
either.
and you will always be disappointed if you
That's
expect
right.
perfection.
That's right.
You'll be disappointed in yourself, and you will
Yeah.
be constantly let down by others.
Hmm.
Yeah, I often say people don't relate to perfection, they relate to people, and
Yes,
people aren't perfect.
that's right.
All
That's
those warts and foibles is what keeps us all interesting.
absolutely.
Now, Penny, in the background, I can see your new book. Is that,
That is
tell me about that. I know it's coming out, so just I'd like to close up with telling people a bit about your book and how they can get in touch with you about that or any of your
Oh, got it.
services.
1 second.
Yeah, sure. Just while she's gone, I'll mention to you that she's been working in workplace conflict resolution, leadership training, writing, interviewing experts, and learning all about workplace relationships. That's what Penny does. So that's what you've captured in your book there.
I am in the business of peace, productivity, and profit. This is my existing book. It's came out in 2014. It's called Give and Be Rich, and it's all about giving,
Hmm.
and the other side of that, receiving. So
Right.
it's a fantastic self-help book, and it's available on Amazon. It's available on my website. But my new book
And what's
is
your website, Penny?
it's pennytremblay.com.
That's right.
Pennytrauma.com. You can learn about the sandbox system,
There
and
you go.
about resolving conflict in your workplace to peace, and then leadership training, and then strategy planning, and practice and accountability, putting it all into action. So my new book is called The New Workplace Sandbox Strategies, Conflict Resolution from the Inside Out. It's a really cute, fun, playful, but very powerful book about, it takes us through the acronym of Play Nice, PLAYNICE, and, looks at the sandbox as a metaphor. The sandbox system, my brand, is a really fun and playful approach to a very prohibitive problem, which is conflict resolution. And I
Right.
approach that from the inside out, so that, no matter who you are, conflict is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So the book is
Right. I have
intended
that on a
to,
coaster. Yeah. Well, I hope that you enjoyed chatting with Penny. Look forward to having her back on my program. And if you have any questions at all, please, I'm going to be putting the contact info down below. Feel free to reach out to Penny or myself. Until we talk again, I am Marion Grobb Finkelstein, wishing for you better business, better communication, better life. Cheers, everyone.